Recommendations.
I believe that's correct. Just give me a second.
Right. Just I've got
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, that's correct. 3 of the recommendations, the first 3 recommendations in the paper are simply to note, and then the board has specifically asked in terms of recommendations 4 to 7 to consider whether they wish to approve or reject the implementation of the proposal.
okay. Right,
Chair,
I've got that.
Chair, when you were away, Margaret's amendment was circulated. You may not have had the chance to.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Email.
Is it in the chat box as well?
No,
It's in
I
the
haven't
email.
circulated it as yet. I was waiting till the meeting formally resumed, and then I will circulate it.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
I have just circulated Miles' amendment in the group chat, and I'll ask Dave Lowe to send that on by email to all the members.
Well, that's a competent motion there that Mags has submitted, so I'll wait till everybody's back in.
I think we're good to go, Chair.
To vote, well, it looks like in every single thing. Right. Okay, so we've had a brief session there with Mark just to run through the kind of process of what we're going to be going into here. So we all know what we're doing and we all know how to approach this. So we have a couple of motions and amendments in front of us. We have a motion from Councillor Cameron, seconded by Fiona Early-Nicholson. We have an amendment from Mags Kerr and seconded by Anne Cameron Burns, I believe. So
Can I just say, Chair, that that's on the basis that Councillor McMillan has agreed to withdraw his amendment at this stage, which is why Anne Cameron Burns is free to second that second item, because the first one was withdrawn.
Chair, I would second Margaret's.
okay, right.
I
so
agree to withdraw mine as well.
And
Thanks,
Ian's
Councillor
withdrawn. Right. So what I intend to do would be to, well, actually, Mark, tell us where we stand in this to begin with, because obviously Mags has got a competent motion here. She's got a seconder. So do you want to deal with that first before I go through the recommendations?
Yeah, so that's a matter for you, Chair. So basically what we have at the moment, as you've indicated, there are 7 recommendations in this report. We could take all 7 en masse, or we could take them one by one. Given that there may be opposing views on each of the recommendations, my suggestion would be that we would take them one by one. Otherwise, it would become very, very complicated in terms of the motions and amendments that would be dealt with. As far as I'm aware, we have no suggestions of anything other than to agree to note, as is suggested in recommendations 1 and 2. So if the group, if the board has agreed to do that, we could move on to recommendation 3, which would then be the one which you currently have a live motion and amendment for. and then it would be up to you whether you wish to allow for some discussion in the meeting or whether you wish to just move straight to the vote.
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll run through the first item and the second one. We'll go through them all individually, but as you say, the first and second is just to agree to note. So if I agree to note that, and if we move on to the next one, which will then see the live motion in front of us that Councillor Cameron's brought.
If members are happy with that, then that's fine. We can note recommendations 1 and 2 as having been agreed. That takes us to recommendation 3. And as I say, the question is now whether you wish to hear from any members of the board and allow them to speak to this, or whether we're proceeding straight to a vote.
Oh no, I think we definitely have to speak. People's voices opinions have to be heard on these. So the first one is the consideration of assessment of the options to close FlexiCare service and approve or reject implementation of this proposal. So that would be the first one. And I see.
Chair, it's the note the update provided on the Mirror and Milldale proposal. This is the third one.
No, provided the Mirror and Milldale proposal. Right, okay, so we'll go into that. So we have that as the live motion we have before us for Councillor Cameron. Competent motion, seconded by Fiona. I'll bring Ian McMillan in here because his hand's up.
As I said earlier on, I wasn't expecting this discussion today, but I am very grateful for Jacqueline and Fiona bringing this forward. I think given the timing of it, it will be of great reassurance to the parents of adults who are at the Milldale and Mirren that this decision has been made today, and it will take an awful lot of pressure off them. I have been, like most members of the board, I've been inundated by people contacting me. I've been to the Milldale Centre myself. I've been in people's homes. I've met people in cafes. I've met people in the street. I've met people in protests. And, you know, my heart goes out to these people. What these people do, not only for their loved ones, but for the whole community, what they do on a day-to-day basis is absolutely incredible. And I just did not want to be part of any decision to close any of these centres. And I think it sends out a strong message if this is agreed today that, you know, Renfrewshire Health and Social Care Partnership is fully supportive of these centres, the work that they do. And I think we need to recognise, was even as late as this morning, there was a report about the number of kids who have special needs nowadays. Now, these kids won't be kids for very long. They'll soon be adults. And where do they go? So I'm absolutely delighted, and I'm pleased. You know, the 2 others and possibly 3 other elected members on this board will be consistent in carrying out what they voted on at the recent council meeting. So I'm absolutely delighted to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what happened was the engagement sessions, wasn't it? You know, when we get out to actually meet the people that these proposals are affecting, then it certainly made me, in discussions with them, a lot of them would say to me, Jennifer, listen, see, you know, we wanted integration. We wanted the best for a child who's now an adult to go into the community. We wanted them to be able to volunteer and have that kind of role in an ideal world. But the reality is they don't always have the ability to do that. You know, when I met the individuals concerned and I saw the support network, as Ian says, from the entire building that they get, it's like a family. You've got a Mirren and Milldale family there. And there was young mothers that I was speaking to, and the young mothers were saying, I don't want that not to be around for my boys growing up, you know. So it wasn't as if they wanted these kids to get out in the community more. They realised how important these hubs were, you know, how the family support that they get from the parents around them as well, you know. I mean, I was hearing fantastic achievements that the service users have been able to do with the backing and the support that our HSCP staff give them. And they were so held in high regard that it really made me think, you know, that. But I see there's a few hands up here now. I'm going to bring in Fiona Milne first.
Thanks, Chair. As a parent of a young man who's a service user. I think these services are invaluable. I'm speaking from my heart here. And just what somebody said earlier, I think, I'm not too sure, this is their community. These people have tried to be included in our mainstream community. Sadly, society isn't very understanding and accepting. The mental health implications if these places are going to shut down would be horrendous, both for service users and families. So I think this is absolutely wonderful news, and I think it just shows how good our health and social care partnership is. They're working partnerships with the carers, they're listening to people, and that's the only way we can get the best outcomes for our cared for. Thank you very much.
Of course it is. Of course it is. My old dad used to say, who cares for the carers? And it's so true. I know Jacqueline Cameron came up with the figure earlier on how much the carers actually save us just in this one field, you know, and they do that from the love of their loved ones, you know, but it's absolutely so important that we support the carers as well, because, you know, you talk about unintended consequences and you say to yourself, what's unintended consequences when the carers come to breaking point? You know, that's going to be turning up a bit acute, you know. So Mags, come on in. You're muted, Mags. There you go. I still can't hear you, Margaret.
There we go. I kept muted for some reason. I just want to put some context around the amendment that I've proposed. I want everyone, both members of the IJB, whether voting, non-voting, or any members of the public listening or observing the minutes at a later point of this, to understand just how seriously each of the members of the IJB take our role and how much work goes in preparing and thinking about each of the proposals. All of us have a responsibility in that, and I don't disagree with any of the comments that have been made earlier about how important this is to all the service users and families out there. And that's the reason I brought this amendment today, because my concern is that within the papers that we received a week ago in preparation for this meeting, there's two relatively small paragraphs about the merger of Mirren and Milldale services that reference the judicial review that's taking place. So I came into this morning not expecting there to be further discussion or analysis of the work that was done, that we all agreed unanimously back in November that we should do an engagement process around those services. And we haven't had the opportunity as a board to review those final papers, the final EQIE with social work impact and all the rest. While we've had lots of discussions and I've had lots of information and lots of work with officers, I haven't been afforded the final findings of that, and therefore I feel it undermines all of the work that we do and the importance of these engagement processes if we then make a decision on something without having all of those findings. So that's the reason I've put that amendment, because actually I want to see all of the output of that, and I want to take time as a full board to understand that and make a decision on it. So that's the reason I've put that forward this morning. Thank you, Chair.
And I understand it, Mags, and I agree with it to an extent as well. You know, it's a really difficult one. There's part of me wants to deal with it today. I feel like I appreciate the fact that it's not on the agenda, and that was the decision that was, you know, that was come to, but it has formed every part of every development session we've ever had. We were expecting it to come to today's agenda. It was only pulled at the last minute. We have had reassurances from our social work, head of social work, who sat through our last development session to give us a reassurance that we need when it comes to these decisions we have before us there. Because John Traynor, he's here today, I'm sure he is, but if you remember, he came in and actually gave us all the reassurance we needed with regards to these proposals. So I noticed that Christine had said that he hadn't signed off on the EQI, which I was a bit surprised at, considering he was completely committed to the last development session about what his opinion was on it. So I was a bit surprised it hadn't been officially signed off. So maybe if John Traynor's here, John, you could come in. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, thanks, Chair. I think that there's a number of difficulties around today, and the EQIA, I just want to have a further scrutiny on it just to make sure it covers all the bases. As I said at the development session for elected for the members of the board, these are not easy decisions that have to be made, and as a consequence of that, we have to make sure that we follow a good process. The process that's been followed by the senior officers in the Health and Social Care Partnership has been, I think, one of the best consultations I've seen in a long time. Now, that doesn't mean that those who've participated always agree with it, because it's very personal, particularly to the parents and the service users, and that makes it incredibly difficult to see whether the process has been good. And people who use services will always come forward and attempt to protect those services because they have real confidence in them. And I think that in itself is testament to the quality of the support. But there's also a bit that we have to consider about how we look at whether or not our services meet all of the policy objectives of the government, of the council, of the IJB, and how we marry all that. So I think that there's still a wee bit of work. I'm not a voting member. I think that you need to be careful as members of the board that you close down a decision without having the full information to allow you to make it. And I know that you know, neither of the options that are currently on the table, I think, give comfort to the parents and carers of the young adults and the adults who use the services, and that's because both of them leave them a bit in a hiatus, but we don't know how long that hiatus will be. So, for example, if Councillor Cameron's motion's taken and passed and that you park until the National Care Service bill comes through, we don't know the timescale for that. And again, we don't know whether that would be a sustainable long-term option, and you might be asked to revisit this proposal in future. I think that the second motion also kicks it into touch for a shorter period, but allows the board to consider further information at their next meeting. Thanks, Chair.
Right, thanks for that, John. Jacqueline, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things in terms of governance. I understand why Mags wants to see more information, but in terms of the EQIA, it would be folly to go ahead with the merger, you know, without having looked at the EQIA or having it signed off. But what I'm asking here is to not go ahead with the decision. So that's why the EQIA isn't relevant in that sense. And just in terms of what John was saying about timescales, the reason that I put meanwhile is simply because, you know, as councillors, we're always advised to never say never. So that's why I put that. But I would expect, yes, that this would be a long time before the National Care Service review is completed. Yes.
Okay. Is there any other hands up? Anybody else want to come in this discussion before I'll go to Mark? And I presume, Mark, are you going to take one at a time with regards to Mags's amendment to see which one passes?
Yes,
follows?
it'll be a vote, Chair. So it'll be a roll call vote of the 8 voting members of the board. We have a motion by Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Ailey Nicholson, and then we have an amendment by Mags Caird, seconded by Anne Cameron-Burns. Could the members confirm whether they're voting for Councillor Cameron's motion or Mags Caird's amendment? And I will call each of your names in turn. Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Ailey Nicholson.
Motion.
Anne Cameron-Burns.
Mags Caird's one.
Right, that's the amendment. Thank
amendment,
you.
Yes. Amendment, please. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Motion.
Mags Caird.
Amendment.
Thank you. John Matthews.
Amendment.
Councillor McMillan.
Motion.
Michelle Wales.
Amendment.
Thank you. We have 4 for the motion and 4 for the amendment. Within the confines of the IJB, there is no second or casting vote for the chair, and therefore on the basis that the matter is a 4-4 tie, the motion doesn't, neither the motion or the amendment passes, and therefore the matter will either require to be continued to a later meeting, or it will require to go to the dispute resolution mechanism. That's a matter which will have to be determined with the chair, and I would suggest we'd have that conversation separately, Councillor Adam.
We will, Mark, as we've already discussed what happens in the dispute resolution, and effectively it does come back to the IJB. It's going to have to be the IJB that make this decision, and we'll have recommendations from the Chief Exec and the head of the NHS, but ultimately, and the leader of the council, but ultimately it will still come back to this board. So, if both of that falls, then Mark.
Yeah, so that deals with that particular matter. So that now takes us on to the fourth recommendation, which is to consider the assessment of the options to close the FlexiCare service and approve or reject implementation of this proposal, which is set out in section 8 of the report.
So I would move that we approve that. Ian. I'm sure you didn't mean to exit, Ian. I'm sure who's exiting. Right, Ian, if you want to come in.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, on my original amendment, I'd asked for a further report to come back and how FlexiCare service can be further improved to provide services to some of the most vulnerable members of our communities. And I refer back to what I said early on. I think we all know that there is a, it's not a very nice word to use, but there is a tsunami approaching of kids who have difficulties, particularly autism, certainly in my experience, particularly autism. And I think we should be doing everything we can to enhance our services, and FlexiCare is one of those services. I understand it's an informal service and it's never really been kind of granted, I don't know what the word is, granted status by the Care Commission, but I think we could maybe do a wee bit better with FlexiCare and make it more attractive to people to come along, as well as being, recognising the number of people who will be coming through in a few years' time. So I would certainly be proposing to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Right. I think the issue, we can maybe bring Laura in a second, but I think it was the volunteers, Ian, that ran FlexiCare. We were struggling to retain them after COVID, so I think that was one of the major issues we have there with FlexiCare. But let me bring in Fiona.
Thanks very much. I would support Ian's take on this, just in terms of FlexiCare, having spoken to people who use FlexiCare. These are people who don't require a lot of support, but it's the only support they have, and it might only be 2 hours a fortnight, but there is no other option for them. And I can appreciate that they said that there's an opportunity for them to join the various groups that are on, and I think particularly people with autism, so there is the opportunity to do that. And again, I would go back to a few of the parents that I spoke to have self-directed support, and they're using some of their money in terms of this. There isn't anything else for them as far as they're concerned, and I think they don't feel necessarily that the people who are going for the 2 hours a fortnight or the 2 hours a week or whatever it is would fit very well into what may be offered to them. So I think I would support Ian in having a wee bit of a further look into it and rejecting the proposal. Thanks.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments regarding FlexiCare? So Ian, you want to move a motion then to reject it?
To reject it.
Okay. And I'll move that we approve it. So do we go to a vote again then, Ian?
Sorry, Chair. So you've moved to approve the proposal. I'm not sure if you've had a seconder as yet for that.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And I'm noting Councillor Airlie Nicholson as seconding Councillor McMillan's proposal to reject.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for that. So again, this will be a roll call vote. We have a motion from Councillor Adam, seconded by John Matthews. We have an amendment by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Councillor Airlie Nicholson. Could members confirm whether they're voting for Councillor Adams' motion or Councillor McMillan's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Airlie Nicholson.
Amendment.
And Cameron Burns.
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Amendment.
Councillor, Max Kerr.
Motion.
John Matthews.
Motion.
Councillor McMillan.
Amendment.
Michelle Wills.
Motion.
Okay. Again, we have 4 for the motion and 4 for the amendment, and therefore neither is carried.
Okay, so the next one, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. So the next one is to consider the assessment of the option to reduce internal care homes from 3 to 2 and approve or reject implementation of this proposal through closure of Montrose Care Home, which is set out in section 9 of the report.
So I'll move the report. I'll move to agree the recommendations. Jacqueline, Ian, who's first? Hands are coming up and down here. Jacqueline, you were first.
I'll let Ian go first if that's okay.
Okay.
Ian, go on.
Thanks very much. I'm moving to reject this. The reason, well, there's various reasons for this. I don't think this whole exercise with the care homes has been handled particularly well. We spent a long time talking about the 3 care homes, and there was never one specified. Now, I might be saying this with the benefit of hindsight, and I put my hands up and say that, but I think we should have identified one internally earlier in the process, and then the people who were affected by that potential closure could have been more involved and more specific, talking about a particular care home. I think it was only last week we were actually told it was Montrose. So it didn't give a lot of time for people to get organised, to think about it, to ask for further questions. And I know there was a protest yesterday. And I know one of my own local members, Kevin Montgomery, he's raised a number of issues because obviously he didn't know anything about it until last week. Certainly Montrose seems to promote a very positive environment. We have got an ageing population, and I would ask if we're doing enough to promote these services. I know, and I've read all the information to say that there's no demand, but I'm not entirely sure if we promote these services as much as possible. And my colleague Kevin Montgomery also noted that the Care Commission had recently given it a very good report. There's also getting back to what I was saying about the Milldale and the Mirren, it's how we treat vulnerable people in our communities reflects on us all, as whether we're in the National Health Service side of things or on the council service thing. I think it reflects on us all. And of course, we are huge, and I'm not naive. I know we are facing absolutely enormous financial issues here. But this saving is minuscule compared with what the gap's going to be in the next year or next 2 years or even beyond. And I know we hear about the number of staff, less staff affected, but how many staff have we got in there? Agency staff who will just be, well, they'll just not have a job. We might be able to replace, well, the other staff with jobs, might be able to give them other jobs, but a lot of the agency staff who have never been offered permanent deals, they'll just be going. And of course, I've not touched on the service users at all, the people themselves. It is their homes, it's where they live, and I know some of them have been there for a number of years, and I know how traumatic it can be for residents and their families if they're having to leave. I'm not comfortable with that at all. And I do think we can do better, as I said earlier on, in terms of getting, advertising to let people know this is available. And there might be people out there that this is actually an option for. So as I say, that's why I'm rejecting the proposal to close Montrose Care Home. Thank you.
I think there's lessons to be learned in how we handle it for sure, because I know those engagement sessions where you had anxiety ×3 for all potential nursing homes that were under threat. Excuse me, I'm just going to bring somebody in. Jacqueline, and you come in.
Okay, sorry, Jennifer. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that private care homes close and are made bankrupt or whatever very, very often, and the HSCP, this HSCP specifically, has got a very, very, very good record of handling these situations very sensitively. That's what happened with Jenny's well, and the communication with the families and residents was really, really good. And yeah, it's been, I think this kind of proposal's been on the table for 17 years, longer than I've been a councillor, and we've been in this situation for a long, long time. So yeah, it's not something that sits comfortably with any of us, but I think, as I say, I'm confident that this can be handled sensitively by the HSCP staff. I also just wanted to say I haven't had any contact from anyone about this apart from a staff member and the ward councillors. So I just wanted to say that the Provost, Councillor Lorraine Cameron, Councillor Stephen Burns have been in touch with me with concerns, but we can talk to them about that in the future. Thanks.
Forgetting I'd mute my mic there because I've been choking away in the background. So, is there anybody else wants to come in with any questions or clarification on this item before we move to what looks like another vote?
Sorry, Councillor Adam, can I just check whether anyone is seconding your proposal and whether anyone is seconding Councillor McMillan's proposal to that?
I think, Fiona, are you seconding me? Yeah.
Thank you. And does Councillor McMillan have a seconder?
Yes, Anne Cameron Burns.
Thank you, Anne. Well, if you're happy, Chair, I'll move to the vote. We have a motion from Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Ailey Nicholson. We have an amendment by Councillor McMillan, seconded by Anne Cameron Burns. Could members confirm whether they're voting for Councillor Adams' motion or Councillor McMillan's amendment? Councillor Adam.
Motion.
Councillor Ailey Nicholson.
Motion.
Anne Cameron Burns.
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
Motion.
Mags Kerr.
Motion.
John Matthews.
Motion.
Councillor McMillan.
Amendment.
Michelle Wells.
Motion.
We have 6 for the motion, 2 for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Okay, Mark, if you want to move on to the next recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. The next the next recommendation is to consider the assessment of the option to permanently close Montrose and Falcon day services for older people and approve or reject implementation of this proposal, which is set out in section 10 of the report.
Okay, I see Ian McMillan's hands up. Ian.
Hi there again. I'm reasonably comfortable with the recommendation on this one. I was swithering about the Montrose day service, but given the fact that the board has just agreed to close the care home, it would be kind of a bit silly for me to argue that the care home, the day service should stay open, because that would provide a whole load of problems. And I say I'm comfortable, you still have a slight unease about it shutting anything at all. But given that they have been closed for a significant period, I understand why this is came before us. So I'm certainly mindful to support the proposal.
Okay. So I don't see any other hands up there. So does this look like we agree this proposal is coming before us to consider? Yep, that's agreed. I see lots of nodding heads. Thank you. That's agreed. Right, Mark, if you want to move on to the next proposal.
Yes, thank you. This is the final one in this paper, Chair. So this is the final bullet point. Consider the assessment of the option to reduce the capacity of the Disability Resource Centre and approve or reject implementation of this proposal, which is set out in section 11 of the report.
Okay. Do we have any objections or amendments to this proposal? No. So I can take it that this is agreed. I see a hand's gone up. Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. Basically, I will always be against anything happening to the DRC. But the simple reason that during COVID, it was left with nothing. Then I had a fire. So people are only just getting used to the idea that it's back open. There's people coming back all the time. They're getting people recommended to them. So what's going to happen to all these people?
I think we've still got capacity there, Stephen, but let me bring in Christine to reassure you, but we've still got capacity for the roles. You know, they've done projections for what we're looking at now, what we're looking at in the next couple of years. We've still got capacity as far as I'm aware when it comes to staff, because you know yourself, I was a service user at the Disability Resource Centre, and I think the world of it, and I think there's few and far between for physically disabled people as it is, and it's an absolute pathway. If you're talking about integration and getting yourself back on your feet and back into the community in whatever form you can, it done the job for me, Stephen, so I think so highly that, you know. So anyway, I'll bring in Christine.
Jennifer, can I suggest Karen give some detail, because she's very close to DRC and the detail around capacity.
Sure, right, sorry, right, Karen.
No problem. Thanks for your comments, Stephen. I know you're absolutely passionate about the DRC, as is, you know, all of our service users and our staff. So the proposal really is a reduction of 2 staff within the DRC, and that really mirrors the occupancy rate. I know you're saying that people are coming back into the DRC, and that's great. We've got a cohort of people who absolutely do come and are committed to coming, but at the moment our occupancy rate, so that reduces it to 85%, but our current occupancy rate versus our availability, even with that proposal in place, still we have less people coming than we have staff to deliver the service. So the service will not change. There's no change to any service delivery within the DRC, and our occupancy rate at the moment for DRC is really sitting under that 50%, not the 85%. So we've got more than enough staff, we've got more than enough spaces for any new people that want to come on board in terms of that support, and we'll continue to monitor that and manage that.
I hope that gives you some reassurance.
As I say, I'm just worried that disabled people are going to miss out, because what happened during COVID and with the fire, I was disgusted with the way that physically disabled people were treated. And I have to say, I just don't want to see a repeat of that.
I think in terms of the fire, Stephen, when the fire hit, we had only opened a matter of days, and obviously the fire was something that happened in the community that we weren't in control of, but we quickly moved and opened up other resources for our people who attended the centre, and as soon as the building was fit for purpose and had been refurbished, people moved right back as soon as that was allowed to happen. So again, just to reassure you.
Okay, I hope it does reassure you, Stephen, because we always keep an eye on what's going on in the DRC. And I was just pleased we managed to repair it so quickly after the fire, you know, because as Karen says, it literally just opened, hadn't it? It's literally been a day or two, and we were all giving it rounds of applause. Thank goodness it's open again, refurbished with such an invaluable service. And the next thing we know, there'd been a fire. So we'll take it on board, Stephen, and thanks for your contribution as always. So I see Ian McMillan's hands up. Ian, I've got some right. Okay, Ian, come on in.
It was just to confirm. Obviously, it looks as if we're going to make this decision. The Falcon Daycare. Sorry. Just going back. Sorry to the Falcon Daycare Centre. Can I just confirm who owns that? Because there might be an option there for some sort of community asset transfer. Because I know in that area well, there's a possibility of losing the police station, and if this area becomes empty as well, you know, Alan might know better than me in terms of any community interest in it. So I'm just flagging that up. I don't really need to get it answered. I'm just kind of flagging it up that there's, whilst this might be not used for the service it was, it might be an option for other services in the Ferguson Park area. Thank you.
Right, okay, that's a different item, Ian. You're just trying to confuse me. As if there's
sorry, I'm jumping about. I might.
Centre, and I've noted what you've said about the Falcon Centre. I don't know who owns it. We can look into that, the legalities of that, and absolutely, as you say, community asset transfers are a good thing if everybody's on board with it and there's a plan to improve the community. So for sure, Ian, that can be looked into. But if we get back to the agenda item, which is the Disability Resource Centre, so I don't see any more hands up there. So I can take it that there's no amendments coming our way and that we agree this item, this proposal. Agreed? Agreed. Right, and that takes us to the end of the Sustainable Futures.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That takes us on to item 8.
Item 8, which is the Delegated Health and Social Care Budget. We've already had that. No, we haven't.
Chair.
Yes, John.
Can I just say at the end of that very, very difficult discussion that and Margaret Kerr said very forcibly how responsibly all of us, every member of the IJB, have taken over this these decisions, and the elected members, I disagree with a single word in terms of the thrust of what they're facing in their constituencies and so on, and answering very profound questions about these cuts or proposed cuts. But the reduction in funding from the centre is excruciating everywhere. And I'm on the IJB in Glasgow, and we had a long, prolonged discussion, as you can imagine, with all sorts of motions like we've had today. And but at the end of the day, we do have a task as an IJB, and that's what we've been setting ourselves to. And it's not without profound compassion for what it is we're actually doing. The health board is the same, huge. We've never had requests for such reductions as we've had, and I've been on the board for 8 years. I don't say that in any way to give comfort, but to say that we really are all on the same page here in terms of this. And even though elected members are voting one way and it appears the health board members are voting the other way, we're doing it with the greatest sense of responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Fiona.
Yeah, just briefly to come in and thank John for raising that. I think it's important that everybody recognises how diligently we all try to do the right thing as we see it. Just from my point of view, there will be further proposals that will come forward. They're going to have to be difficult ones that we all have to grapple with. And from my point of view, some of them that will come forward will be stuff that will support and some won't be. We understand from a financial perspective that we've got a requirement to make the budget meet what we have available to it. And I think there will be times in the future where we have to look at other options. And as an IJB, our job is to say these options are fine for us, these are not. So could you go away and look elsewhere in terms of other options that could be available to us. So it may appear that actually we're not looking to do anything in terms of the budget at all, and that's not the case. It's just that we may have times where we say you'll have to go away and come back with something else because this option here is not one that we find palatable. Thanks.
Absolutely. I'm pleased I brought you in there, John, because it's something I should have done myself, obviously. You know, I think, see, once you get through a contentious item like that, you're kind of like, right, moving on. But you're right, and that's a lesson from me, John, to stop, pause and address how serious we do take these issues, because, you know, it is something that we've worked on for months. We've been engaging with carers since November. You know, I've been taking calls on a daily basis. So it is something that we all are passionate about and we all want to. And, you know, and my thanks to the officers, because I know this is not easy for any of you, you know, to even come forward with options that, you know, you need to do to balance the budget in the first place. So please accept the fact that I really appreciate all your work and your support, and especially Mark getting us through this voting process, because it's one that we're a bit unfamiliar with in the IJB, because we normally go by consensus. So since I was elected in 2017, this is the first time we've ever had a vote in the IJB. So it shows you, you know, how challenging and difficult the position we're all in. So I thank you for your time on that item. So we are now on item 8. My screen has just disappeared on me. 2 seconds and I'll bring it up. So item 8 is a delegated health and social care budget. 24-25. Sarah.
Yes, okay, so this is quite a lengthy paper, so the amount of discussion already this morning, I don't propose going through it in detail, and I will assume that everybody has read it. I will just draw out a couple of things as usual, and I think the first bit is that you're being asked to agree the balanced budget outlined in section 9 and note the 2 budget offers from the council and health. So the as we've discussed, and it has been highlighted numerous times to the IJB, I've also put very clearly in this report both my responsibility to set a balanced budget, also the IJB's, and that's set out quite clearly in section 3 for yourselves. And then if we turn to section 4.11, just to clarify the position in terms of Strathclyde Fund, and members will be aware that there is a slight well, it's quite substantial amount of money that we're being able to draw down on a non-recurring basis over the next 2 years, which really help the IJB's financial position. But it's really important that members are aware that is non-recurring. The recurring element of $500,000 is built into the current budget gap, so that's already accounted for. But just to remind people that after the next 2 years, that 3.5 will disappear and the gap will then become higher because of that. The next area, just to draw everyone's attention to, is in 6.8, and that's just in relation to the budget offer from the council. And just to let members know, that budget offer is absolutely in line with the conditions of the letter from the Deputy First Minister. So I would recommend to the IJB to, we don't accept or reject this. It's just to note it, but just to say that it is in line with that budget offer. And also in 7.7, the same applies to the budget offer from health. It's also in line with the conditions of the letter from the Director of Health and Social Care Finance and Richard McCallum. Then if you move to 8.7, that basically highlights the gross estimated budget pressures, and you'll see they're quite significant. But also to remind members, these change on a daily basis, and myself and my team, we review the budget pressures on a 4-weekly basis, but they are subject to change. But as at this point in time, those are the estimated pressures next year, but with the caveat that they could change. Then if we go to section 9, this is really where we're summarising the entire position for the budget for next year. And that reflects all of the pressures that I've identified throughout the report, the impact of any initiatives, including prescribing. There's a wealth of work going on with prescribing that you'll all be aware of, because we have discussed that at various development sessions. And what I think is quite important is to remind members that within this report, I have not taken into account any of the savings that are proposed today, because they are time sensitive. For example, the closure of Montrose will not happen in a couple of weeks. It will take time for the residents to be moved on to the care home of their choice, etc. So this budget is not predicated on those savings. So in section 9.2, that's a summary of the position highlighted in the table and how we will actually manage the budget in 24-25. And I'm recommending that based on the need to draw down reserves for 24-25, we can deliver a balanced budget. However, as mentioned on very many occasions, that is really just pushing the problem further down the road, and the IJB will, and it's already been highlighted by members today, there will be some quite difficult decisions coming very soon to the IJB to make. So that's really the budget position as is. The rest of the paper summarises really the position going forward and what that gap will look like and when we will run out of reserves based on the current position. But again, members that I don't know what the level of drawdown will be required in terms of the care at home regrade, so that will have an impact on our reserves as well, but obviously I don't know that detail at the moment, so happy to take questions.
Okay, Ian McMillan, I see your hands up.
Thanks very much, and thanks again, Sarah, for doing these reports, because they are, I wouldn't say they're simple to read. It takes me about 2 or 3 times to get through them, but eventually the penny drops and I get what's going on. I think the key point for me is at 8.1, when you say that health and social care is receiving its worst settlements since devolution. You know, if you go back to 1999, yeah, it's not to say there wasn't health problems then, of course there were, but they are far, far greater, and the demands and the services are much greater, you know, in the last few years than they ever have been in the last 25 years since devolution. I think the health and social care sector in Scotland has been let down by both the government in Edinburgh and the government in London, and they really need to refocus on what their priorities are. And the priority is, for me, there's 2 priorities for me as a councillor. One's education, that's not for discussion here, and the other one is health and social care, and that is very much up for discussion here. And I do really feel as if we are being let down here at the chalk face, and that's why we've spent the last, you know, couple of hours going over these very, very difficult decisions here. And again, just to be consistent, you know, I'm concerned about the kind of repeated use of reserves. I don't think we've got any other option, and I totally accept it. But eventually, the money is going to run out or get really, really low, that it's not going to cope with any future emergency. It's a very, very bleak picture. And it's good we can produce a balanced budget. Yes, of course it is. But at the same time, it's going to get more and more difficult in the next couple of years. But thanks again, Sarah, for your very good report. Thank you.
Sorry, my screen has disappeared here. This is my new laptop. Can everybody still hear and see me okay?
Yes, we can see. We can
Yes.
hear you, Chair. Mags Kerr's asking to come in.
Right, okay, Mags, come on in.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the paper, Sarah. I think it is well laid out, and I think it sets out the position that you have been keeping the IJB up to speed on over probably over a year now. I guess coming into the overall positions that you set out at 12.2 in terms of the funding gap going ahead, and the fact that the reserves will be completely depleted in the relatively short term. I'm then drawn to your comment that the IJB is swiftly heading towards having to implement financial recovery measures, if not in 24-25, then the following year. I wonder if you can just briefly explain what financial recovery measures mean and what that means for staff and service users.
So hopefully I've laid out in section 13 the highlights of what that would mean. But what that does mean is that we would have to slow down spend, and we would not be able to commit to any new expenditures. So that could be new packages of care. You might have to then have waiting lists, and vacancies would be delayed. Obviously you would look at vacancies and be even more robust. We have a very, very robust review of vacancies as it is, but that doesn't account for the fact that actually you would need to slow that recruitment process down even more so. Where you've got staff ratios, you would endeavour to fill them as speedily as possible. But it is basically a slowdown of any new expenditure, and that's the position that we would find ourselves in, which is not one that anybody particularly wants to find themselves in at all. I as a Section 95 officer, cannot approve expenditure for which there is no funding, and I think it's essential. Okay, hopefully that answers it, Mags.
Okay, any other questions or comments with regards to Sarah's report? Right, just give me a wee seconds, I'll run through the recommendations. Hang on, I had a second to go. Okay, so it's recommended the IJB note the delegated adult social care budget for 24-25. Oh, my screen's just disappeared. What page was that on? Sorry, the recommendations, because
it's page 85. Chair, if you want, I can read them out for you.
Please, Mark, that'd be great.
So the recommendations are to note the delegated or adult social care budget for 2024-25, note the delegated health budget for 24-25 as set out in Appendix 4, which is subject to any final adjustments in relation to the current budget adjustments at month 12, and any further funding allocated by the Scottish Government in respect of the impact of the 2024-25 pay award, and finally to agree the balanced budget outlined in Section 9, including the drawdown of required reserves in order to deliver a balanced budget for 24-25. So there are two items to note and the final point to agree.
Okay. So if I agree to note all the points and the last item to agree. So can we agree? Sarah's financial report. Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. So are we on to hosted arrangements now?
Yes.
Yes, Chair. Item 9 is hosted services performance 23-24.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll bring in. Do you want to
me.
speak to it, Paul, yourself? No. It's Francis,
myself,
right?
Francis, that'll pick this up. So this performance paper, as Mark has said, is an update on the hosted services that Renfrewshire HSCP deliver on behalf of the Integration Joint Board. So just, and I know many members on this will be aware of it, but just for anyone listening, where the IJB hosts the service, it's responsible for its operational oversight, strategic planning and its operational budget on behalf of a number or all IJB across a health board area. And with the ones that we're discussing today, it's on behalf of all of the 6 IJBs in GGC, and those are podiatry services, primary care support services and GP out of hours on an interim basis. So I don't plan to go through the report in detail. I think it's a really positive update that hopefully provides a high degree of assurance to members. However, I do have the respective lead officers on today if members have follow-up questions. I've got my colleague Paul Higgins, who is a member of the IJB and lead for podiatry, and we're also joining us is Alan Stevenson, who's the interim primary care and GP out of hours. So I've only got a couple of points that I would really highlight in the paper, as I say, positive. In relation to podiatry, that's in Section 4. And I really just to highlight the really strong performance whilst seeing really unprecedented levels of demand in referrals and managing a large number of staff vacancies. So the 90% target for new referrals to be seen within 4 weeks has been sustained at or extremely close to that target. And in addition, for some of our most vulnerable patients with foot ulcers, despite the referrals increasing to, like, I think they've sustained at about 200 per month since May 23, we have managed to meet a sort of average of 91.3 patients getting offered their first appointment within 2 working days against a target of 90% for quarter. So that's really positive. And also, we have provided some details around the sort of innovative improvements and development work that the service has been using to predict and manage capacity and also around development with growing your own workforce initiative. So a really positive update. And as I said, Paul can answer any other questions folk may have on that. Section 5 details the work of our primary care support team that support general practice and our community optometry contractors. So the report, I think, helpfully highlights the really work of that team, and it includes like health surveillance, immunisation programmes, and the transformation work and progress against the primary care improvement plan. And there's going to also be a further report brought to the IJB in the summer that will outline the development of the new 5-year primary care strategy. And then the final section of the report, section 6, gives an update on GP out of hours, which has been, as I mentioned, hosted on an interim basis by Renfrewshire since August 22, so it's not been formally delegated. As many members will know, this service provides services for urgent care and non-life-threatening medical issues out with the hours that GP surgeries and normal services are available. The current performance for GP hours continues to exceed the target position of 90% of sites open. And for the week that this report was written, it was actually 100% of the shifts were available, which is a really positive performance. Also, we've seen an upturn in terms of people's views and perceptions of the service meeting their needs, where the recent survey showed that 90% felt that it was meeting their needs, and that it compares with 83% in 21, and a wider report on the recent engagement programme and its results will be coming to the NHS GGC board in the coming weeks and used to inform the development of the service going forward. So that's all I really wanted to say about the report, but as I mentioned, we have Paul and Alan available to take any follow-up questions. Thanks.
I'd just like to say I welcome the report. You know, I was pleased. It's nice to have some good news in amongst today's agenda. And I was really pleased to see that we'd actually superseded the targets, as you say, you know, when it comes to seeing people within 40 hours with foot ulcers. So, and that's quite reassuring to hear, because I remember there was a lot of concern a few years ago after I first got elected. There was a lot of change getting made to podiatry at the time and people were concerned. So having this report before me today, really helpful. I really welcome it. Well done. I see Fiona's hands up. I'll bring it in first.
Okay, thanks very much. It was really just to say and comment what a good report this is. Just looking at the improvement across the areas that were there, and thanks everybody for their work on that. Just interested in terms of 4.7, where we've been looking at service development, and that's on page 123. But it's really just a comment in terms of the fact that it's highlighting here that there was 50 prospective employees graduating in 2023, and 50% of those went to private sector. And I think that's a trend we're seeing across a number of different disciplines. So it's really good to see that the measures that have been put in place here are about attracting people early. And actually it was just to comment on the work that's been done to try to address the balance there. So it's just good to see that. Thanks.
Thank you, Fiona. Paul, I don't know if you want to come in and say anything with regards to your report.
Yeah, but just in Fiona's point there, she's absolutely right. The private workforce is growing exponentially, whereas the people moving into public sector is decreasing dramatically. Hence the reason we take a real strong view on a kind of strategic plan to how we recruited people into the service. Now, initially part of that was to employ level 4 students, which we've exhausted. The next part of that was to employ return to practice people, and that was people who had maybe graduated a number of years ago, fallen out of practice and profession, but wanted to come back, but couldn't afford to leave a job to do that. So we've engaged with people who have returned to practice and who are now employed and engaged within the service. And the third natural part of that was round about to begin an undergraduate training programme with our GCU partners to employ people whilst they earn at the same time. Now, this year we're in cohort 2 now. We had 63 applicants for 4 posts. The traditional university course have only got 40 applicants now for the traditional course, and they've got 60 places. So we've got about 30% more applicants for 4 jobs than they've got for 60 places. So it shows the trend, and I think a lot of it's to do with cost of living crisis and families not able to support children to go to university, and people who want career change can't afford to give up jobs to do that. So yeah, we need to look at it entirely differently, and we've embraced it, and other boards in the country are looking at that model now. So yeah, it's been pretty successful for us so far in cohort 2. So we're pretty enthusiastic about how that should progress.
It's really positive to hear, Paul. Thank you. Right, I look forward to hearing more. Any other questions or comments on this report? So we can agree it. Excellent. 2 seconds, I'll bring up this PDF. So that then takes us on to item 10, which is IJB Audit Risk and Scrutiny Committee. A verbal update by yourself, Max.
Chair, I'll just keep it fairly brief. It was a full agenda just a week ago. Probably key things to flag was approval of the internal audit plan for next year, the current plan in progress, and that will all be part of the governance review that's done ahead of the annual report and accounts that are prepared for the end of June. We followed up on the training and development for the members of that committee, just to build on the work that was done with internal audit in the autumn of last year. We had the external audit report and their plan for the financial audit that's upcoming. That plan was presented to us, not for approval, but for our understanding and agreement of. So that was quite helpful to understand the areas of focus that we'll have. Touched on a number of the areas that we've had in our agenda this morning, particularly around sustainability and financial sustainability of both the IJB and the services within the partnership. And then finally, just to flag that as part of that process, we've been updating our risk management framework and some of the definitions within that. So those are the key aspects that were covered in the meeting. Happy to take any questions or follow up separately with anyone. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Max. Is there any questions today? No, everybody on board with that? That's great. Thanks for that, Max. And that leaves us with the last item, which is the date of the next meeting. Are you coming in with that, Mark? I see it's a report by Clark.
Yes, thanks, Chair. The report is asking for agreement on the dates of the meetings for late 2024 and early 2025. Those are set in the report. However, there was some discussion about whether this meeting would now move to a hybrid basis, and we're asking members to make a decision on that particular aspect, whether we remain fully online or whether we go with a hybrid system. The suggestion, if it was hybrid, would be that we would run it from the council chambers here, which would allow the meeting to be in person for the majority of people who would wish to attend, but would still also allow a hybrid function for those that wanted to join online. Thank you.
Okay, Ian McMillan, see your hands up.
Well, as you know, I've been going on about this for quite a while, so I'm quite happy to see meetings to be held by hybrid. I think you can see that, you know, Mark and the other clerks are in the council buildings. It seems to work okay. And to be honest with you, I'm fed up sitting on my spare bedroom floor doing these meetings. I would much rather be sitting in a chair. So, you know, you'll not be surprised to say that I think from now on, or the next meeting from 28th of June, they should all be held in a hybrid. And I would certainly be looking forward to meeting some of the people who I've never actually seen before or never met before. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important that we go back in person as well, but always have the hybrid option there. I think what held us back before had been the return, going into the chamber, but I think we're all fine with that now. You know, we all know each other well enough that we've got a good working relationship, and there's no need for that kind of anxiety that was first proposed about us all going into the chamber together. So, you know, so I'm fine to agree that we proceed forward on a hybrid method, return to Renfrewshire House when it comes to IJBs. So. Do you need anything else more than that, Mark?
No, that's fine, Chair. That was all we were looking for.
Right. Okay. Well, that just leaves me to thank you all. I know how difficult. I see John Matthew. John, I'll bring you in, and Jacqueline. I know how difficult today has been. I know how much I was anticipating it, you know. So, but that just shows you how much we care, you know. Because if we didn't, so I'll bring in John Matthews. You're muted, John. This will be the last time you'll be muted because you'll be in person next time. So it'll be a lot
Sorry,
easier.
because I didn't mean to speak, but I just wanted to say that you handled this well as the chair. I know how anxious you were about it, and we were on your behalf anxious about it, that we were safely guided through that. Mark's been very helpful too, and we've all behaved ourselves and so on. So well done to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mark. Jacqueline.
Yeah, just the same thing. It was a complicated meeting, and you handled it really well, Jennifer. And thanks to Mark for his guidance and everybody for their patience.
Thank you, Ian McMillan. You want to move against this, Ian?
No, I want to go back to item 4. No, I'm only kidding. No, listen, I know how difficult that these meetings are, having been sitting in the same, the same position as you in the past, Jennifer. It's no easy. I was fairly nervous about the whole thing, even this morning, and even kicking about this kind of thing for about the last 25 years and doing these things very, very often. It gets to me as well. And some of the decisions we made, well, I don't agree with some of them. I agree with some of them, but that's the way it works, and we just have to deal with the fallout of any decisions we've made from now on. But I think you handled it very well, Jennifer. And again, thanks to Mark for giving us the information, because I don't think I've ever been involved in such a voting system that's ever been so complicated. So thanks very much.
Absolutely, and thank you, all of you, and thank you, Mark, in particular, because you absolutely guided us through that, because I've never been in the situation. We work often with motions and amendments, but, the advice was correct that you gave us, but then we had to be prepared to move in every motion, so every item. So no, listen, thank you very much, all of you, for your support, your help, and Mark, and especially for your guidance. Fiona, I see your hands up. You want to end on?
Just the last thing, thanks obviously to the chair, that was a very difficult process, but can I thank everybody else who's attended this meeting, because it's probably been quite confusing for some people, and I think long for others in terms of this whole process. I want to especially thank the officers here who have done a power of work in terms of coming up with the options for us to consider, and just to reassure them, this was not an easy I think opportunity to look at these options for any of us. So to thank everybody for the work that they put into the information that they gave us, and for attending today. Thanks.
Okay. I probably shouldn't add this at the end, but I was just wondering, Mark, for a bit of clarification. See, when it comes to the items that there was a kind of draw on, so will we go to dispute resolution on that? Will it have to be, would we call a special meeting, Mark, or would we look at putting it in the next one? What would be your advice?
That's something I'll have to discuss with you, Chair, as to whether we look to bring it back to a future meeting or take it to dispute resolution. That is something that sits with you, so I'll have that conversation separately and we'll decide from there.
We'll take it from there. Okay, well, that just leaves me to thank you all again. And I'll see maybe some of you tonight. So some of you going to the Provost Awards this evening, I'll see you there. If not, I'll see you next week. Okay.